Welcome. Today we're going to take a look at SAP Business One's core inventory and WMS capabilities out of the box. I'm running SAP Business One 10.0 on the SAP HANA database. Now, what you're going to see today is applicable to both the HANA and the SQL deployments. So, without further ado, let's take a look at SAP Business One's core WMS and inventory management. To start, I want to start with a real quick comparison. A lot of folks hear the word WMS and their mind instantly goes to handheld scanners. But WMS involves a lot more than just scanning. So let's take a look at what you can do with SAP Business One out of the box without any additional software in order to manage your inventory, optimize your inventory, and eliminate excess inventory, eliminate stockouts, as well as really have a much better control over your overall inventory processes. So out of the box with Business One, it comes with a standard WMS set of capabilities. And these capabilities include the ability to use tethered barcode devices. So these would be USB wedges, wands, Bluetooth devices. All of those can be set up and used with any of the data entry screens within Business One. Also, SAP supports unlimited warehouses. So you could have as many different warehouses as you want. And these could be both virtual locations as well as logical locations. Bin locations, same thing. Inventory transfers, the ability to do bin-to-bin transfers, warehouse-to-warehouse transfers. Of course, cycle counting. That's a process of counting different sections of your inventory on a regular basis. So by the end of the year, you've counted your inventory several times without having to bring without having to stop sales and shipping for a week or two. Physical inventory, of course, we can do those as well. Miscellaneous receipts, miscellaneous issues of inventory. These are really important too. The ability just to make an adjustment to your inventory. It's a super easy process, and it really needs to be. Picking, packing, shipping, that's all out of the box. Now, if you are a manufacturer, you can issue to production. You can also issue from production, my finished good or my subassembly completion. Not on this list is the ability to capture scrap and byproducts and also return unused inventory back into stock. So all of that's available from production. Now, what's fairly new at 9.3 SAP is full serial and lot traceability from cradle to grave, from supplier all the way through to the finished good and everything that happens in between. That's all reportable. And then the ability to process RMAs, returns, and of course, receiving. There's ways to perform some, pretty basic QC as you're receiving as well. And then, of course, there's more things that didn't quite make this list, but are equally important. So that's what you can do with Business One out of the box. Now, there are add-on solutions that are very low cost, mobile apps that give you the same functionality through an iPhone or an Android, a tablet, handheld scanners, full WMS, enterprise level WMS with things like cross-docking, license plating, manages chain of custody if you're in a pharmaceutical industry, full container tracking, route planning, and then lastly, another option as well that even gives you the ability to take pictures of the products you're receiving during, goods receipt. But we're not going to talk about the WMS extensions. Today, we're really going to focus on standard WMS. What does SAP deliver out of the box? So let's go ahead and let's take a look. First thing is let's start out by looking at some of the system settings. In system initialization, there's an area in here called company details. And on the basic initialization page are some settings that will relate to how you want to have your inventory configured. And we'll go through some of these. One of those is, I like to mention this one, multi-language support. That's kind of cool. And I'll explain what that is here. But if I go into an item master, and I know I've got some item set up here. Let me find it. Let's grab one of my chemicals here. Let's grab this one. But what you've got here is when you turn on multi-language, you see this icon here. And what that allows you to do is that gives you the ability to not only have your item description in your native language, but also be able to propagate that description in different languages. So if I'm printing a delivery document or a packing slip for somebody that is in China, then SAP will automatically display this version of my item description. So the multi-language support is really pretty cool. And not a lot of people are aware of how that works there. So that's one that I like to turn on. Now, this one's very important. Do you want to use a perpetual inventory system? So perpetual inventory is a real-time inventory system, right? And once you turn it on, you can't turn it off. But I would say, I don't think I've ever run across anybody that isn't using perpetual inventory. Most companies, you're buying an ERP system to really take advantage of inventory optimization. And so it makes sense to have real-time inventory, but it is optional. You can turn it off. Then we want to know, how do we want to value your inventory? There are 4 different cost methods that you get with Business One out of the box. The top 3 here are a moving average, a standard, and a FIFO. Now, this is not a global setting by any means. It doesn't apply to every item in the database. This is only a default. So I could have items that I'm doing actual cost on, and then I could have other items right in my same warehouse that I might be doing standard cost or average cost. So the system has that flexibility. But there are some options here that says, do you want to manage individual costs per warehouse? And that's important because I'm here in Southern California, but let's say that I had a warehouse in Alaska. To get my goods from Southern California to Alaska, there's going to be some pretty extensive shipping charges. So the same item I have here in California could have a different cost in Alaska. And that's what this gives you the ability to do. And have the same item could be costed differently in different warehouses. And then lastly, do we allow a stock release without an item cost? That means, can I ship a product? Can I receive a product that doesn't have any kind of cost associated with it? Because you have the ability in your inventory transactions to revalue your inventory, this isn't, a bad thing to have on, because sometimes we don't always know the cost of an item until we get the AP invoice, right? So it makes sense to allow cost release without cost. But check with your CFO and your accounting team to see if that's something that makes sense for your business. And then if we are going to turn on serial and lot control for any of our items, how do we want to handle the serial and lot cost? Do we want to have our serialized items, our lot-based items, tracked by the item group valuation method, which could be, again, moving average, standard, or FIFO? Or do we want to add a 4th cost element, which would be an actual by serial or batch? And that's what this checkbox does. All right, so that's a little bit there. Now, there is one other setting I want to mention, and that is in document printing or document management. So if we go into our document settings, here we go. On the per document, when you get into not quotes, but when we get into sales orders, you'll see that it adds a checkbox here that says, do you want to activate automatic availability check? So if you turn this box on, what that will do is during order entry, if you don't have a sufficient amount of quantity to provide that customer what they want, this will pop open a form that says, Mike, what do you want to do? Do you want to not sell them anything? Do you want to look for alternate items? Do you want to check other warehouses? And I get a whole list of options that I can do in order to fulfill that order, even if I'm out of stock. So for new users, when you're in a new implementation, you're new on Business One, I recommend having the automatic availability check ticked. But if you're familiar with Business One and you already know how the inventory system works, then that's just one more form you don't have to deal with by turning it off. So a little bit of information there. All right, so those are some of the key setups for inventory. There's other things to set up as well, and then we'll just talk about those briefly here. But when I go into inventory, there's a concept called item groups. This gives you the ability to group your items however you want. So for example, I sell wines. Wines are one of the products that I sell. So anytime I add a new wine into my item master, it's going to take these defaults automatically. It's going to be in an item group called wines. The default unit of measure will be a 750 milliliter. I want my wines visible to MRP. I don't make the wine, I buy it. And then I don't have any order multiples. So when I need to buy wines, let's say that wines typically come in cases of 12. So what I could do here is I could say that when I order my wines, I've got to order them in full case counts. And my minimum order quantity is also 12, which means that I need to order a full case. So that's a little bit about the item groups. Now, where you see that come into play here is if we go into the item master, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go into inventory, and I'm going to bring up my items. Here's the item group field. So let me bring up one of my apparel items here. And you can notice here that if you key in part of the item ID, it'll narrow it down for you. So let's grab this large reflective vest. So here's that item group. So in this case, that item group is apparel. And if we drill down, you can see it uses the default unit of measure group called default, with my default unit of measure being an each, visible to MRP, 30-day lead time. And then if there are any default bin locations in any of these warehouses that I want this item to go into when it's being stored, I can specify that as well. But that's what the item group does. And then item group comes in handy when you're searching for your items. And I'll give you an example. We'll go into find mode. I'm going to put a wild card under my product ID. And this brings up a list of all of my items inside of Business One. And now if I go to apparel, you can see that I also have a subgroup. So this is really important. You have the ability to group your items in an unlimited number of categories. Item group being what comes out of the box. But let me grab an item here. Let's drill back into it. You can see that I also have a subgroup called safety vests. So if I want to create a third subgroup, a fourth subgroup, I can do all of that. And when we're looking for our items, let's go back here. When we're looking for our items, and we'll open up apparel. If we go into the form settings, you can see that I'm getting everything grouped by item group because that's the way I've set it up. I've also added a user-defined field called a subgroup, and I'm grouping by that also. So now I get a two-tier grouping when I look at my items. And this is great if you've got millions of items in your system. If you're dealing with a large volume of inventory, you want a really quick way to be able to find the item you're looking for. So I could go into the form settings here. We could remove these groupings. I could also add any additional fields into our lookup list. But I'll change that there. We'll cancel out. Let's bring our find back up. And now you can see I get this list that just goes on and on and on that shows all of my inventory in the system. And in this case here, if I'm looking for something, it might be a little bit harder to find than if I have them all grouped. So that's what we're going to do. Let's go back in here. We'll put those groupings back in place. We go into the form settings. We want to group by item group, and then we want to subgroup by the subgroup field. Here we go. And now we've got it back the way we like it. So if we come back into our lookup list, now you'll see it's all grouped and then subgrouped. All right, so let's grab an item and let's go a little bit more into the item master in SAP Business One Core WMS. So I'm not going to go through every field. Let's talk about the screens first off. So you've got the header portion of your item master, and then you've got all of the details down here as tabs. Off to the far right, these are all of my user-defined fields. subgroup being one of those, which you can see I've placed on the main form. But I've got things like style, color, size, season. Some of these user-defined fields have drop-downs. So there isn't any limit. You can add as many flex fields or as many user-defined fields as you want. Not only that, but with a right mouse click, you're able to create new tabs on this form and add any of these user-defined fields to that tab. So the system's incredibly flexible from that perspective. All right, so we've got our user-defined fields here. These are my quick launch buttons. So if I'm looking at an item, the safety vest, I want to see where it's used on any of my bill of materials, I can do that. If it's serialized, I want to look at all my serial numbers. Or maybe I want to import my item from a CAD system. I want to do a miscellaneous issue receipt. Here's an example where I just found a dozen of these safety vests behind the door, and I want to bring them back into stock. So with one click, I could do a goods issue. I could put in here the 12 safety vests I found, specify where it's going to go. And just like that, I've adjusted my inventory by 12 units. We've now received 12 units. I didn't have to have a purchase order or anything else. And I think that's important. You need really simple ways to adjust your inventory when it makes sense. So that's a little bit about the layout of the form. Now on the general tab, just some key things here. Is this item going to be managed by batch or serial? Now I'm getting a red bar message here saying, Mike, you can't modify that because this item's already in use. Because I already have inventory of this item, I'm not able to instantly turn on serial or lot control. But let's just say you've got an item out there that your boss comes to you and says, hey, we want to start tracking lots or serials on this item. In that case, because I have inventory, what I would need to do is I would need to do a miscellaneous issue. And I would need to issue all of my inventory out of the system temporarily. Then I could turn on and flip that switch, turn on serial or lot control, and then I could bring my inventory back in. So one of the other cool features here on this, let me find a serialized item. What I'm doing here is I'm saying, look up all of my items that are controlled by serial numbers. So let's go out and we'll find one here. Let's go into our automotive category here, into finished goods. And I've got this top level finished good that's serialized. Here you can see I've got the serial numbers turned on, and there's really two options here. Do you want every time this item moves, do we want to capture the serial number, or on release only? And that means basically when I get ready to ship this item to a customer, then I need to log the batch or serial number. Now, one of the nice features when you turn on serial control is that SAP will has the ability to associate a warranty template with that serialized item. Because if you think about it, if we're selling products that aren't serial controlled, we don't really have a way to capture when the warranty starts and ends because there's no serial number on that item. When you turn on serial control, we know the exact item that was shipped to that customer, when it was shipped, when it was invoiced, when it was paid for. Therefore, we're able to track warranty details. So in this case here, I have basically 3 different warranties. We'll come up here and look. I've got bronze, gold, and silver. Of course, you can call these anything you want. And if we take a look at my bronze warranty, I can see that this covers any phone calls Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., except on Saturday. It also includes, under warranty, it includes any parts and labor, but it doesn't include travel or holidays. Now, there's a remarks tab here where I can put in more details about this warranty and then also attach a formal warranty contract. Now, when this item, when that warranty is about to expire, in this case here, this will give me a reminder 30 days in advance. So I can try to now sell an additional warranty to my customer. So we have the ability to really turn your service department into a profit center. Now, what happens when you ship a serialized item, it can automatically then start that warranty. And that's what we call an equipment card. And so here's an example. I'll just bring up one of my last items here that I shipped. So Using my VCR keys here, I can click on that last record. Here's an example where I have a serialized robe hook in my kitchen apparel or my kitchen supplies. And this robe hook is a serialized item. Here's the last serial number that was sold. And this will keep track of any incoming service calls on that item. This will show when an item was sold, when that warranty expires. So I can see that this is under warranty right now. I got all my sales details, who we sold it to, when it was delivered, invoiced, so forth. And then my serial traceability. I can see when it came in this case here, it came in through an inventory adjustment, and then when it went out. Full traceability there. So that's a little bit on the serial capabilities and lot traceability of the system. It really extends itself in through other modules. Let's bring up our apparel item again. Let's come out here and bring up our large safety vest, and we'll look at a few more key fields. Is the item active or inactive? Sometimes you'll hear a term called use up capability. So what I like to do is I'll say, I'll put an active range in here that this item's going to be active until, let's say, October 31st this year. Then on November 1st, it's going to become inactive. So this will allow me to use this item and use it up until this drop dead date of Halloween this year. And then it'll instantly inactivate this item. And so on my bill of material, I could have this item listed, I could have the item and then its replacement item right below it. And then production won't see, won't see any variance, right? The old item will stop being called on the BOM, and the new item will then, have its effectivity date properly affected. So those are some key items, and I apologize. I keep jumping out of the item master here. Let's bring it up one more time, and we're going to look at just a few really key fields that I think are really important to have some ramifications throughout the system. Now, the other one here is on the purchasing tab. This is where you can come up with a list of your approved suppliers for this item. SAP will always keep track of your last purchase price and the item price, of course, but that gives you the ability to establish an approved vendor list. And it's optional. It's not enforced, by the way, not out of the box, but you do have ways with the tool set to enforce the approved vendors. But what I wanted to get to here is in this item, I normally buy these apparel items in cases of 32. But when I sell this item, I sell it in 2-packs. And when I stock this item, I stock them in eaches. But when I do my cycle counting, my physical inventory, I'm counting cases. This item also has a default location. This is where I want that item to go to. That's the default location. That's where it needs to go when I receive it. Now, this item could wind up in other locations for various reasons. For example, if my storage area in my main inventory is full, then I might also put this in my mass storage into this bin here. So again, you've got complete control of where your inventory is, all the way down to the bin locations. So those are your 3 different units of measure. So the way that this works here is if I go to purchase this item, let's go into a purchase order. Let's copy this item here real quick. This is, here we go. Let me grab that. Let's copy that. Okay, in our purchase order, we're going to buy this from Far East Imports. And so we'll put our item in here. And what I want to show you is you can see how it dropped in that purchasing unit of measure. Now I can change this to any unit of measure in that unit of measure group that's assigned to this item. I could buy it in a pallet, a case. If we look at the price here, we can see it's $666.67. But if I buy it in a pallet, if I change my unit of measure to pallet, you see how that price jumped way up. So this gives you the ability to buy your inventory in 1 unit of measure, sell it in a 2nd unit of measure, and then stock it in a 3rd unit of measure. Really nice components there, capabilities. Lastly, if we go here into the warehouse for these items, these are all of the valid warehouses that this item could be found in. Now, For example, if maybe I'm closing this store and this item's no longer going to be allowed to be in that store, then I can actually remove that warehouse from this item. That'll prevent now this item going into that location. Now on the planning tab, oh, let me go back. A couple of other things to mention. If we go to my main inventory location on this item, I can also establish a minimum inventory level, a required inventory level. We see this used quite a bit in the aerospace industry and also the medical industry, but particularly the aerospace industry. There's a term called AOG, aircraft on ground. And for some key components for the aerospace industry, it's required that some of the manufacturers always have a certain amount of inventory in stock of these key components. And that way, if an AOG or an aircraft on ground flag is raised, we always have a certain amount of key components we can provide to Boeing or to whoever our customer is. So the caveat here is SAP won't let me go below that level without changing this first. So this really does protect your inventory. A required inventory level truly is that. How much do you require to be in stock at all times? And then also a maximum inventory level. You notice here that this item is in two different locations and it carries two different costs. That's $21.92 in my main warehouse, but in warehouse O2, which is Handi, China, the cost is different. You know, it's a slightly higher cost because the cost to ship it over here. Now, I also have the ability to establish cycle counting in any of my locations. So this is being counted quarterly, and I could see that my next count date was the 8th of this month. Also, is this a drop ship warehouse? So there is some drop ship functionality, and we'll show you that here in a bit. That does give you the ability to create real drop ship purchase orders directly from sales orders. Okay, moving on. We talked a little bit about the planning tab when we were looking at the item group here. Is this item visible to MRP? MRP, by the way, is another module in SAP, very WMS related. And it's where we could do forecasting. It's our netting of supply and demand, backward schedules, and tells us when we need to buy, what we need to buy, or when we need to create work orders on what we need to produce. That's what MRP does. And so this is asking us, Mike, do you want this item visible to MRP? And if you do, is it something that we buy or is it something that we make? Now, if I were to make it, then on the production tab, we would see a bill of material here. Now, order intervals. Do we want to, you know, if I'm running a just-in-time environment and I am placing purchase orders daily, even for the same items daily, my suppliers could get a little peeved. They're like, darn those guys at Vision 33, they keep sending us purchase orders for the same item every day at different quantities. Well, what the order interval does is it allows you to aggregate that demand to, let's say, maybe once a week. Then I'm only placing one purchase order with my supplier on a weekly basis for an aggregate of all the demand or all the items that I need. So the order interval is, again, a nice way to kind of streamline or reduce the quantity of paperwork with your suppliers. And then order multiples. Now, you could probably correlate. I think you guys are connecting the dots. Why I have this set to 32 with a minimum order quantity of 32. It's because my purchase unit of measure is case, and I get 32 per case. So when MRP tells me to buy more safety vests, I don't want it to tell me to buy 1.2 cases. I want full case counts. And so my this means that that I can only order full cases, 32, and my minimum order quantity is 32, which is a full case. So even if MRP says, Mike, you need 2 of these vests, what's going to equate back to MRP is an order for a full case. And then the lead time. How long does it take us to get these items once we place that purchase order? And the lead time is in days. And that's another field that MRP is going to use for backward scheduling. Now, if this was a make item, we'd see the bill of material here. So what we'll do is let's update our item master here to incorporate our changes. And then I want to bring up a make item. And let's take a look at the bill of material for this item. So here I'm in a make item. We see on the planning tab, this is a make. We make it from our bill of material. If we go to the production data tab, now we can see that I have a production BOM. That's important because you actually have 4 different types of bill of materials: production BOM, assembly, sales, and template. Assembly, sales, and template BOMs are used during the quoting and sales process, and that's for another session. But if we look at our bill of material here, it's really a collection of routing stages. In this case here, picking, cutting, finishing. And then within my routing stages, I have different inventory items that get issued. And then also different labor steps. I'm capturing the time it takes to pick my material. I'm capturing 3 different labor steps here, one for assembly, drilling, electrical, and then also QCing the product, and then I have more labor for packaging and handling of this product. All of this then totals up down here to a product price. And that product price, $1247.30, gets written back to Business One as my cost. And so that's what the bill of material does. It's a great way to estimate what a product will cost you to manufacture, of course. Now, if I switch this to my regular sales price, then you can see this cost or this price jumps way up. And we'll talk about the price list here shortly, but we'll go back and we'll look at our cost again there. All right. One other thing to mention is that you can also set up different costs for your different units of measure. So if they buy a case, they'll get a discount. And if they buy a pallet, they'll get a bigger discount. So I can put in here that I normally sell these on eaches. But if you buy a case, you get a 2% discount. And if you buy a pallet, you get a 4% discount. And so I haven't had to create that in my pricing options down here. If I go to my inventory module, in inventory, there's an area for price lists. And I could set up special prices for a business partner. I could set up period volume discounts here and do the same thing. But that's a really easy approach. I think it's really easy. If it's global across the board, no matter what price list the customer's tied to, I think it's great to be able to come in here and without having to adjust the price list, being able to put in a couple of discounts, and we'll go ahead and update our prices there. Okay, properties, these are user definable. You could have as many properties as you want, up to 64, I should say. You get these 64 properties you can use right out of the box. They come listed as item property, 1, 2, 3, 4 through 64, but you can relabel these for anything you want. This is important because when I get into my inventory reports, so for example, if I want to look at my inventory that's in my warehouses, not only can I select what warehouses do I want to look at, but I can narrow this down to those user-defined properties. So maybe I want to find all of my items that are great for outdoors, or if I'm in the food and beverage industry, all my organic food and beverages and whatnot. So the properties are a really nice way to add filters into all of your reports. There's a remarks tab where we've got the product image, supplemental details about this product, and then any kind of attachments. So as an example, I can click on an attachment. It could be a PDF. It could be a schematic, anything, whatever you want, whatever you need to attach these items. It's unlimited. And when I generate a quote or an order, because you get the Crystal Reports Designer with the software, if you want Crystal Reports to include these attachments in that order acknowledgement, then go to town. That's all stuff you can do out of the box. All right. So that's the item master. Now, within inventory, there's a lot of other capabilities, the ability to do barcoding. Let me give you an example of that. If I want to, say, print barcodes on my pick lists, then if we go in here let's bring up a pick list here. I'll just grab one of my last pick lists. This one was for, let's find one that's got here we go, a couple of items on it. Here we go. I'm going to do a print preview here. And you can see that that generated a pick list with barcodes. And again, this is out of the box. And so what you're able to do with the print layout designer here is you're able to manage these layouts right out of the box and then add barcodes anywhere you want them. So I can say if I want to add another barcode, and maybe I want a barcode, maybe the order number or something like that, then I can do that. And this gives me the ability to tell the system, where do I want this barcode to come from? So I can say, you know what, I want to go out to the database and I want to grab this from this table and I want it to be that field. And now every time I print a pick list, I'll get that new barcode on my pick list. So you do have the ability to add barcoding wherever it makes sense on any of your documents. So that's there. Document printing, this gives me the ability to control different features when I go to do my document printing. It allows me to print, a mass list of sales orders or a mass list of invoices, deliveries, all within certain filtering criteria. Bin locations. So SAP gives you the ability to manage bin locations. And let's take a look at that. I'm going to go into my warehouses here. And I have one of my warehouses, 05, is set up for bin locations. So if I go back to a standard warehouse that doesn't have bin locations turned on, this one's a tank. Let me go back to 01 here, my main inventory. You can see here, this is a nettable location, which means MRP will include this warehouse in processing if I want it to, because it's nettable. I want to have this warehouse netted with my supply and demand. But I haven't enabled bin locations. Now, if I go to my warehouse 05, in warehouse 05, I have enabled bin locations by checking this box. So that brings the second tab to life. So I have 74 different bin locations, and I have a default bin location of ST for staging. So my default bin location says when I receive inventory, put it into my staging location, ST, or if I complete a work order, put it into my staging location, and then I do a put away. And that's a simple inventory transfer. But you don't have to have a default location. Now I can drill down into my list of bins, and this shows that for me, I've got warehouse, aisle, shelf, level as my bin attributes. But when you're setting up your bin locations, you have a lot of flexibility as to what do you want to call your bin attributes and how many bin attributes do you want. It could simply be a numeric number, one attribute, which is a simple alphanumeric number. I'm using 4 attributes, but again, it's very flexible. When I drill down into my bin, I can see, the quantity of items I have in each bin. So I'm able to drill down and see what's in that bin. But now let's look at a bin itself. In the bin itself, there's a couple of really neat things that you can do here. First off, is it active or not? Can you receive directly to this bin? Is this bin excluded from automatic allocation and issue, right? Then is there a certain, these are aggregate columns. These will total up for me. These 4 columns here will always show me the weight of the bin, number of items in the bin, what's the quantity of items, and how many of those are batch or serial traced. Is there a barcode for the bin? Is there a maximum quantity that this bin can hold, a maximum weight, and then a wave sort number. Now, this is used for generating a wave picks. And a wave pick is the ability to go out, generate a pick list, and walk through your warehouse in a succinct order so you're never having to double back. So this is kind of gives you your ability to give your bin sort numbers to which bin do we go to first, then second, then third when looking for our products. And it can really cut down your picking times. Then we have some restrictions. Are there any item restrictions? Specific items, this bin is only for one item. Maybe my aerospace items can't go into this bin for whatever reason. Unit of measure restrictions, batch restrictions. Is this bin for a single batch? And then also any kind of transaction restrictions. What don't we want moving goods in or out of this bin? This will keep track of when the bin was last updated. Why was it last updated from a cycle count? And then these are user-defined fields. So I've added revision to my bin. I've added a kit. I've added a room to my bin. And I can, say that this bin exists in my, in the back of my dispensary. That's an example where we were showing Business One for a cannabis company. They have different bins that exist in different rooms. So this gives you a lot of creativity within your bins. Is this bin customer specific, offer a certain color of products? These are just attributes I've added, but you could add your own attributes to the bin as well. So that's a little bit on the bin locations. You're able to set those up and create all of those bins in mass. And that's where your inventory is stored. And the real important thing here, I think, is it nettable or not? And then lastly, I've got another location here, which is a dropship location. And a dropship location will cause SAP to create a dropship purchase order during the order entry process. And I'll give you an example of that. We're going to place an order for Earthshaker. They've exceeded their credit limit. We'll let it slide this time. Let's bring in our safety vest here that we want to sell. But what we're going to do is we're going to change our warehouse to a dropship warehouse. Now, when I do that, when I go to add my sales order, you'll see it automatically opens up the procurement confirmation wizard. And it's going to walk me through step by step, creating a dropship purchase order for this sales order. And it's done. Now, if we look at the relationship map, the workflow for this sales order, we'll now see that this sales order is tied to a dropship purchase order. And if we drill down into our dropship purchase order, we look at the logistics tab, that's my customer's address. So that is a true dropship purchase order. And we got all of that by simply specifying that we wanted to drop ship this product from our manufacturer directly to our customer. So that's a little bit about how the drop ship warehouses work in a sales environment. All right, following up on inventory then, item management. This is where we can manage all the serial numbers. Serial number management here gives me the ability to run a report and view all of my serials based on my filtering criteria. And then serial number detail allows me to see all of the details behind a specific serial. So by details, you have the actual serial number. And in a lot of systems, that's all you get. That serial number is just a field in the item master, and that's it. There are no attributes underneath it. But in Business One, you can have as many supplemental attributes for that serial or that lot as you want. So here's some examples of what I've added into my system. Now, these are standard: admission date, manufactured, does it expire? Is there a warranty start in? Where's it located? Details. Now, what I've added in is a best by date. Clinic, doctor, patient, test, viscosity, pH, slaughter date for my beef customers, port of entry for my distributors, country of origin. Is there a width, height, depth, grade? At a customer that sells coins, what year was the coin minted? Where was it minted? You can get as crazy as you want. There's no limit. You can add as many user-defined fields as you want to, including fields that might also be part of third-party products, like in the cannabis industry, we have metric IDs. So again, you have the ability to really get creative, and the list just keeps going. So these fields you can have as many as you want, and then you can control which one of these fields are optional and which ones are mandatory. But I think that's huge, the ability to really dig deep and put in all of your serial details, all of your batch details is really important. So you get the full serial batch traceability. Inventory transactions, this is where we can do miscellaneous receipts and inventory and issues of inventory. Now, inventory can be transferred bin to bin or warehouse to warehouse. But you can preface that transfer with a request. A request isn't an actual inventory transfer, but it's just a request. It's just an acknowledgement that we need to move inventory from point A to point B. The actual transfer itself then is how we move that inventory. And I have the ability to take all my inventory transfer requests and then pick the one that I want to move forward with. And that'll then bring that into my system here. Whoops, we go to our transfer, here we go. Let's bring it over. And now you can see I didn't have to key this in. Somebody out on the warehouse saw that my Michelin Air tires needed to be moved from my main warehouse to my overflow warehouse. And so they put in a transfer request. Now, me as the operations manager, then I can go ahead, review that transfer request, and then I can click add and actually execute that transfer request. In this case here, this is a lot controlled item, batch controlled item. I only have one batch, so I'm just going to auto select from that batch. But if I had multiple batches here, I could select what batch or serial am I moving in this transfer. Also, a quick note, if there are multiple serials or batch, SAP will list your serials or batch on a FIFO basis, first in, first out. That way, the oldest inventory will get used first. And we'll go ahead and select OK, and we'll add that inventory transfer. Now, that item, if we go over here and we drill down into our item, we drill down into this particular tire. If we look on the inventory data tab, we look at warehouse 02, I now have, before we had 33, I now have 34 sitting in that warehouse. So it's real-time inventory there. All right, other things that we can do, recurring transactions. So if there are certain things that you do WMS related, whether it's calibration of equipment, maybe you buy packing foam every month. You buy, 100 pounds of packing foam every month. You can set that up as a reoccurring transaction. And that way you'll have a purchase order raised every month automatically when you execute your reoccurring transactions. So those available. Now, inventory counting. This gives you the ability to do your cycle counting, and your cycle counting could be a one-step or a two-step process. Inventory counting, this creates what they call an inventory count. Here's my count 13. So I could have multiple cycle counts going on at one time, and I can also import my data from Excel. I can export this out to Excel, and then I can import my counts back from Excel. So I could have somebody walking through the warehouse with a tablet, updating the spreadsheet, and then when they come back to the office, I can simply import those counts. Now, of course, we could integrate with handheld scanners, but again, today we're talking about the core WMS out of the box. So I would create an inventory count. The inventory would then be counted, and any variance will show up here in red. So I can see that I've got a variance of 5 units here. Now, once the counts are done, we then copy those counts to an inventory posting transaction, and this will make my difference for the variances. So in this case here, I had a variance of 1. In this case here, a variance of 5. And so when I post my counts, that's what gets posted to General Ledger, are just those variances. So very simple, easy to use process for cycle counting, but it can be a two-step process. The person putting in the counts may not have the access to actually post the variances. So again, you can control through security who can do that. Inventory opening balances. This is a screen that we use during implementation where we paste in all of your your inventory, and we give it a, where else bin is it in? What's your opening balance? What's the value of that inventory? This allows us to jumpstart your implementation process and go live very quickly. All right, price lists. Let's talk a little bit about price lists. SAP has some really neat price logic out of the box. Not only can I import all of my price lists and special prices, but also from suppliers. If I get an update from a supplier, I can import all of that price list in one fell swoop. But what I want to start out with is the price logic. How does SAP work its magic during order entry or quoting and estimating? It's very straightforward. When we put in a sales order or a quote, the first thing SAP does is it looks to see, is there a blanket agreement? And a blanket agreement is another word for a contract. It's SAP semantics for contract. Is there a contract with this customer where they've agreed to buy X amount of product over a certain amount of time to get a very special discount? If there is no contract, then SAP will automatically go look to see, are there any special prices that have put in just for this business partner? So we were working with Earthshaker earlier. I could have set up a system that says anytime Earthshaker buys these 3 apparel products, they get a special price, regardless of their price list, right? So I can set that up. But if there are no special prices for that customer and those items, SAP then goes to look to see, okay, are there any period and volume discounts that have been set up? Now, when we talk about discounts, discounts could be applicable by if it's this product group, if it's from this manufacturer, this item. If it's Earthshaker, they get this discount. Or if the customer belongs to this group, they get, that discount. Or, you can, of course, manually add a discount, of course. But that's the third place it goes. Are there any predefined period and volume discounts? If they buy a case of 32, they get a 2% discount. If they buy a pallet, they get X. Then finally, if SAP can't find any of these things for that item and that customer and that price, then it will simply go to the price list. And that's what I'm going to show you next. And if none of this works for you, you have the ability to manually create your own pricing logic and execute that through what we call a formatted search. And again, that's a topic for another discussion, but the formatted searches are a real powerful tool you get out of the box that'll auto-populate fields based on your own user-defined logic. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at our price lists. I have 20 different price lists, and my price list, most of these are based off of my cost. So my base price, my cost, the default, it is what it is. My base cost is my base cost, 100% of my base cost. But my family and friends price is my cost plus a 30% markup. My wholesale price is my cost plus a 90% markup. My regular sales price is a 100% markup, 2 times my cost. Now, Service King, which are a bunch of auto dealerships, auto repair facilities in the Central and East Coast, Service Kings, they've got their own price list. So you can see that there is no base price list. It's their own price list. So this gives you the ability to create as many price lists as you want. And those price lists could be based on or off of other price lists, plus or minus a certain margin. Now, SAP will always keep track of your last purchase price and then your last evaluated price. Your last purchase price, this is your AP price. This is what the AP invoice said you're paying for these items. However, your last evaluated price, that could contain, let's find it here, that could contain landed costs. So if you're buying from overseas, or if you want to roll your shipping costs into your product, like container, duties, customs, those kinds of things, that's your last evaluated price. It will include those landed costs. Okay, let's go back to our inventory WMS. Moving on, we've talked a little bit about price lists, but this is where you set them all up. period volume discount, discount group, special prices. This gives me the ability to update all of my parent prices globally of some of the raw material changes. And then I have a price update wizard. Price update wizard will give me the ability to add, subtract, divide, multiply, set prices equal to a full wizard criteria that I can go through to do very surgical price updates without having to manually go into the price list and change my prices. Okay, so that is the deal on price lists. Then we have a process here called picking and packing. And picking and packing is one of the ways that we ship products inside of Business One. So what we'll do here is let's go into a sales order. I'm going to put a sales order in for Earthshaker, and we're going to sell some products. We're going to go into our item list. We'll grab some apparel here. We'll open up our safety vests. I can see exactly how many I have on hand, allocated, and on order. Let's grab a couple of these. In fact, we'll just sell all 4 of these there. We'll choose those. We'll bring those back into my order. They want 1 2-pack of those, and then 3 of these, 4 of those, and 5 of those. So we've got our sales order out there. We see that we've got available inventory in stock. So we're going to add and view our sales order. Now, I have 2 ways, a couple different ways to generate the pick list. One of those is I can check a box here to print the picking sheet. Now, when I go to print preview my order, it says, well, what do you want to pick? The order, the pick list, or both the order and the pick list? It's not actually creating a pick list, but it's creating a document that will allow me go up to the warehouse, pick the goods, and then simply copy this to a delivery. And that's a shipping transaction. I now capture the freight and it's off and running. I've now shipped the product. So that's one way to deal with a picking and delivery process. Now, the other way is a little more formal, probably designed for more of a high volume type of process. So if we go into inventory and we go into our pick and pack manager here, now I can say, show me all open sales orders that I can fulfill 100% of. Now, I can also narrow this down and do something like if I'm shipping for a certain type of route or FedEx or UPS, I could narrow down what I could pick, pack, and ship just, based on these filters. But right now, I'm just saying, show me all of the open sales orders that I can fulfill 100% of from these locations. When I select OK, this brings up a list of all those sales orders I can pick, pack, and ship. So, excuse me. I can select all of these and then release the picking. Now, that will create one pick list. That's what we call a wave pick. Remember the bin sort ID. That'll create one pick list, but it'll walk me through the warehouse sorted by bin location. So I don't have to go to aisle B first, then back to aisle A, then aisle D, then back to aisle C. All that goes away. It'll walk me through a succinct order through the warehouse. What we're going to do here for today's demonstration is we're just going to pick the order that we just took a minute ago, and we'll go ahead and release this to picking. And now we're creating a formal pick list. We'll go ahead and generate that pick list. You can see that these have gone off my to-do screen. And on the next tab, this shows me that I've got pick list out there, 559. Pick list 550 is also still being picked. But let's drill down into our pick list and take a look at it. Here's our pick list. We'll do a quick print preview. It's all barcode enabled. And so to pick these goods, I can enter in the amounts that we picked over here. I could, if I'm using a tethered barcode scanner, like a USB wedge or a wand, I could be scanning the quantities that I've picked, or I could click one button that says, I picked it all. I picked everything we need. So we'll go ahead and select update. And now that we've picked those goods, it's now being packaged. So here I can see that other pick list too. I've got multiple people in my warehouse right now. I can see that they've also finished picking, that their order is also being packaged. Once we get our order packaged, then we go ahead and now we can create our delivery document. And a delivery is a shipping transaction. we'll go ahead and add our shipping transaction. Now, this is where we integrate with all the freight systems, ShipStation, Starship, FreightWise, Process Weaver, and the such. When we integrate with the freight systems, you click the button, it'll rate shop for you. It'll validate the address. It'll bring the freight cost back into the form for you automatically. And then it will also bring back the tracking numbers. So a lot happens with just a click of a button there. And we'll go ahead and add our delivery. And now that the delivery is added, we've now shipped those products. And if we go back to where we started here, and we look at our sales order where we entered some inventory and we sold it and processed it, we see our sales orders closed. And if we right click and look at the relationship map, we'll see we took our sales order. At this point, the inventory was soft allocated. And then we shipped our product where the inventory was now taken out of the warehouse. So that's a quick look there. Now, one last thing to mention is the available to promise. If we create a purchase order for some of our apparel items, and we'll go ahead and do that. Let's create a PO with Far East Imports. Here we go. And I'm going to buy some of my apparel goods here. Let's get the large. And let's say that we want, remember now, these should be cases. There we go. So we want 2 cases of larges. And these need to be delivered on 4/1. So we're going to add our purchase order. There we go. Now, the next time I'm in a sales order for that item, and I'm just going to bring up our last sales order because it doesn't matter whether it's open or closed here. Actually, it does. Let's duplicate our sales order here. Let's duplicate it. So now I've got another sales order. This time it'll be with MaxiTech. Here we go. And what I want you to see is that you can see that I also have some of these on order. Now, when I add my sales order, let's talk about the real-time inventory process. When we added the sales order, it automatically reserved. It did a soft allocation of our inventory. And I can see that I have these on order. So on any one of these items, I can right mouse click and look at the available to promise. And this shows me that I've got 2,382 in stock, but I have a purchase order that was scheduled to be delivered January 30th for a case of 32. It never came in, so it's late. But you see this time phase available to promise. And when we get our purchase order on 4/1, case of 32, that'll bring us up from 2958 to 3022. So this will give your sales reps time-phased availability of when they can promise the products to the customer. So that's a little bit there. Now, the last thing we're going to do today is we're going to run MRP. I'm just going to go through a real quick MRP here. We have another session that really focuses in on just MRP. So I'll go through this pretty quick. But I've got different planning scenarios. I have one for my oven timers that I sell. So we're going to use that scenario. I want my MRP to start today, and I want to plan through the end of this year. This is where I could be doing a what if scenario, like what if we get that really big order? How's that going to impact my business? We'll go to our next tab here. These are all of my timers that I sell. These are all items in my database, my inventory master that I sell. So those are the items we want MRP to look at. And I'm telling MRP not to look at all my warehouses, but really just focus MRP on some of these warehouses that I have over here. I've got different stores that I want MRP to look at, trucks. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn off all of this. I don't want to run MRP. I don't have timers in my trucks and anything else. Excuse me. So what we're going to do is in my active warehouses, we're going to look at our main inventory. And that's it. That's the only thing I want MRP to look at. Look at my main inventory and do a netting of my supply and my demand. I think this is the screen that connects the dots here. We want MRP to look at purchase orders. Don't tell me to buy something if I already have a purchase order for it. Purchase contracts, look at those. Sales orders, sales contracts, look at production orders because they create both supply and demand. Also, look at any inventory requests. Include those in what do I need to do to optimize my inventory. And then I'm also telling MRP, look at my minimum inventory levels. And by the way, I'm including a forecast. So I have a forecast here. And just a quick note, I didn't have to create that forecast myself. I use the intelligent forecasting, which looks at my sales history and then applies triple exponential smoothing and a linear regression with a damp trend seasonality adjust to analyze my sales history and then forecast what it thinks we're going to sell going forward. So I've got a forecast of potential demand coupled with my actual demand, which will consume my forecast. And then I've got visibility of all of my supply. Then when MRP gives me instructions, I want it to tell me what do I need to purchase and what do I need to transfer and what do I need to produce, all backward scheduled by lead time. So we're going to save our scenario, and on your mark, get set, go. We're running MRP. MRP is memory resident. It's super fast. I can remember back in the old days, starting MRP on Friday and praying to God by Monday, it would be finished. Thank goodness those days are gone. So here are the results of my MRP run. And what I really like about SAP Business One's MRP is it speaks plain English. It doesn't use a lot of acronyms. Example, I see my initial inventory today. I see any supply coming in, any demand going out, and then I see my final inventory for the day. Super, super simple. Here's a good example where on 4/1, I start out that morning at 113 units. I don't have any supply coming in, but I do have some demand of 100. Now, I haven't got the actual order yet because it's just forecasted demand at this point, but I can see that's going to bring me down to 13 units left in stock. So we'll finish our MRP, and then we'll go look at the results. So we'll complete MRP. There we go. We'll go into the order recommendation report for our timers. And I could start out by just saying, you know what? Just show me, what do I need to do today? That's it. That's all I want to see. What do I need to do today? If I'm a buyer or a planner, that's it. I got 11 things I need to do. Not a bad day's work. And it's telling me, Mike, you need purchase orders for these items. These are the quantities you need. They have 30-day lead times. So if you need them on this date, then you need to place that purchase order today because of that lead time. I can see here, here's the one that I buy in cases, 32 per case. So it's saying you need 3 cases. These I'm buying in eaches. So I'm getting the actual quantity counts there. You can change quantities. You can change units of measure. You can also change the supplier you're going to buy these from. Before you create those purchase orders, you can also change your pricing, add discounts, and even change the location you want these goods to be received at. If I agree with this, I'll go ahead and I can do all of these at once if I want to. Because these are all bought from the same supplier, Hondi, when I click update, this will create one purchase order, and there it is. Instead of creating separate POs with the same supplier, I consolidated those into one PO, and I have nothing left to do today. Now, if I go back to my MRP recommendation report and I remove the date filter, then I can see for the rest of the year, what do I have to do? And I can sort this by release date. And it shows me that I don't have anything else I need to do until 4/9, where I need to purchase these timers. And it goes through the entire list here. So in this case here, I'm showing you MRP from a distribution perspective, a distribution company, no manufacturing. If I was a manufacturer and these needed to be manufactured, then instead of purchase order, we would see a production order. Even though I buy this item, I can also, if I want to, create a work order to build it. I can create a production order if I want to. Now, this could also generate purchase requests, purchase quotes, and of course, good old purchase orders, which we did a minute ago. So we'll conclude today's overview on inventory by going into purchasing, and we'll bring up the purchase order we created from MRP You'll see it tagged down here with an MRP tag. And here are all the items that we need as soon as possible. We need them by 5/6. And so we've got all of the documents here ready to go. One quick note, I'll just throw this in for free. Handi is a Chinese distributor of mine. They're a Chinese company. And so when we created this purchase order, you can see it also handled the foreign currency for me beautifully. I see foreign currency right next to my US or Canadian currency side by side. So in case you're wondering, foreign currency is completely supported throughout the entire system. All right, that should give you a quick overview or a pretty deep overview of inventory. We weren't able to touch on every aspect of inventory, but hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea of what you get out of the box. And then keep in mind, there are additional modules that can be added that give us the RF hand scanning, that support QR codes and all kinds of things. Visual inventory systems with lights, you name it, we've done it all. Automated pick systems. SAP has an open API architecture. And so there's a lot of growth that can happen without having to grow headcount. Thank you for watching.